All right. So thank you everybody for joining us. I just want to take a moment and thank our author that we have with us today, Cheryl. She's going to be joining us for a little author talk or an interview about her books and her book series that she has available for readers to be able to purchase or read. As many of you know me, my name is Jennifer. I am the activity services guide for our Pines and Plains Library Simla branch. We are located in Elbert County, Colorado, and Cheryl comes to us from Colorado as well. She's one of our local Colorado authors. We're going to go through for the next little bit. And we're going to ask some questions and learn more about her. We're very excited. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
And so what we want to do is really just learn a little bit more about you, and then learn a little bit more about your books and then where we can find those books as well. So we'll just jump right on into it. In our conversations and in talking, I know that you love spending a lot of time with your family. You enjoy writing. And one of the tidbits that you shared with me, I thought that it was amazing that your grandson has already written his first book. So following in the footsteps. So I have to ask, what kind of book did he write?
Cameron's Book of Insects.
Okay, very cool. So is that a chapter book or is that a picture book?
It's a picture book. Let me get this off of here. What he did was he took pictures of his favorite bugs.
Yeah.
And then he wrote a little bit of text on them.
Very
and then
cool.
Grandma got it formatted. And I apologize, I should have done this before, but I didn't think about it.
No, that's perfect. It's like unwrapping for the first time. That's awesome.
So then here's his praying mantis.
I love it. That's awesome. Well, we do, one of the things that we do at our branches is we do a lot of STEM or STEAM type of work and activity. I love that he is interested in bugs. We try and incorporate that into a lot of our STEAM and our STEM programs that we do. It might be one that I have to reach out and figure out how I can add that into my collection so that during our fall programming, we can do a little session on some of the bugs that he finds the most interesting. Now, in addition to your writing and encouraging his writing, which that is an amazing feat for him to have already written his first book, tell me a little bit about your travels. You also mentioned that you really enjoy traveling.
Oh, I love it. I say we enjoy it.
Right, as a group, yeah.
Yeah, my husband's a former football coach.
Nice.
And so we travel in the fall about every year, every other year. We try to go to a college football game out of state.
Okay. Any particular college or?
He's got a whole list of ones he wants to see. This year we are going to see Ohio State.
Okay. Very cool.
He wants to see the stadium. I want to see him dot the I when they come on the field.
There you go. Nice.
And then, and then we travel internationally. We're very fortunate. I'm also a retired airline employee.
Oh, nice.
So we travel for pennies.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's
awesome.
So
we spent 3 weeks in Egypt.
Very cool.
we just go by ourselves.
Yeah.
And we just use the train up and down along the Nile from Cairo down to the southern part of Egypt, and spent 3 weeks over there just going through things and looking at stuff and marveling at how anything can live in that desert land.
Oh, right.
Yeah. And so that's where I got my inspiration for my Egyptian books was that one.
Right.
And then we went to the United Kingdom, England, Scotland, and Wales.
Very
and we
cool.
spent 3 weeks there also. And we just rent vehicles and we just drive around on our own. And when I started to write the second book in my Guinevere trilogy, before I wrote that, I said, you know what? I need to know where this is at.
Right.
So, I need to be there. So we went and we did that. We visited places that I'd written about in my other books.
Very cool.
And then this last September, we left and went to Iceland for 2.5 weeks and rented a car there and drove the entire island around.
Nice.
And my next book that I'm going to write in my new series will take place in Iceland. And so we went there.
Very cool. So Tell me, how does it feel when you go to places like Egypt and the locations in the UK that you've kind of brought to life in your book series? How does it feel to be standing in those same places that you're bringing, these characters together?
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
In fact, and even if it wasn't my characters, it's still awfully amazing.
Right. I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I've never traveled internationally before. It is definitely something on the bucket list. Maybe in the next 10 years or so, once the baby gets a little bit older, we might look at doing something like that. So I could only imagine. I mean, I think that we get so wrapped up in what life is like, just kind of in our own little bubble. And then to be able to see those types of places and experience the different geography, I'm sure that that's pretty amazing.
And to experience the customs and the people. Everybody always said, oh, how could you possibly have gone to Egypt?
Right.
She said, it's so dangerous. I said, well, we pay attention to where we're at. And I said, the people are very friendly.
Yeah. So you didn't experience any of that at all?
No, you can't take yourself too seriously when you travel.
Right. Yeah. You just have to be able to kind of soak it up and experience it, be open-minded. Right. So is there kind of a rhyme or reason behind the locations that you choose? Do you pick places that you kind of have this inspiration for already, or is it more just random, kind of, throw the pen at the map kind of thing?
Well, it's not really that random. Right. Egypt, I hadn't even started the writing, but it's a place I've always wanted to go and I've always wanted to see.
Right. Okay.
My husband's idea was a week before we left, we went to Las Vegas and we went to the Luxor Hotel. I said, no, This isn't going to cut it.
Right.
We have to go and see the real thing.
Right.
It's just, I love the ancient world. I love the different, the medieval times and things. And of course, I'm a big King Arthur fan.
Right.
And so that was one of the huge reasons. My parents' families were both from England, from Wales.
Very cool.
And so that was another reason why we went. But I just love seeing different cultures, different countries, and it's just amazing.
Right.
Iceland was the second time we'd gone. The first time we only went for like 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to see the Northern Lights so bad, so we went for 3 days in the middle of the winter, and we didn't see them. But so when we went back, I wanted to go and see more of the country.
Right.
And so we went in September when the weather was still decent, rainy, but still decent, so that we could drive, and so we drove for 2.5 weeks and just marveled at every single day what we saw and what we experienced.
So when do you start planning for the next trip? Do you already have a place in mind? Or?
I think we're going to go to the Mediterranean.
Very cool.
I have a friend. I have 2 friends now who live in France, and I have a friend who lives on the island of Cyprus.
Okay.
And I want to go and see Pompeii.
Very
cool. My husband's family is all from Italy.
Okay.
So we want to go and see that. I want to see Greece. I'm a huge mythology fan. And so I want to see all these places that I've taught about for so many years.
Yeah, that's awesome. I am equally as enthralled when it comes to the mythology behind, especially the Grecian mythology. I, however, also really love food. So as I hear you talk about these places that you've been to, I think, man, I'm sure the food over there would be so amazing. I bet that would be a great experience. Yeah. So talking about some of the places that you taught prior, you had mentioned that you were previously a teacher, retired as a teacher. So what subject did you teach? Did you teach history?
High school English.
High school English. Okay, very cool. So during your time as a teacher, what were some of the things that you kind of, using now your writing, going into that, aspiring into that, what did you do during that time as a teacher to really kind of give that inspiration to some of your students? Was there, certain things that you did, assignments that you had them focus on?
Well, we did a lot of writing, but that writing in high school is very different from what I do.
Right.
We did a ton of literature.
Mm-hmm.
And they always came alive when we did the King Arthur legend. Mm-hmm. They loved that. And we did a lot of the ancient world stories right up through the Middle Ages. And they thoroughly enjoyed those things. In fact, they spent a lot of their time comparing the stories like Medea and that from ancient Greek and Roman times to today's world, and how those things, they're still going on.
Right.
It isn't something that died, you know,
Right.
2,500 years ago.
I will say I took AP literature when I was in the 11th grade. I will never forget Mrs. Barlow. She was absolutely an amazing teacher, even, a decade plus later. I still remember some of the things that she taught us. And I think that's where a lot of my love for some of that kind of classic literature really comes from. I mean, of course, when you're in the 11th grade, you're reading through these books and you're going, oh my goodness gracious, the language. I don't, it's trying to understand and put yourself into that time period. But I tell you, she knew what she was doing because she planted the seed. And now, years later, I still really enjoy reading a lot of that classic type literature and really kind of getting into that. How long did you teach for?
25 years.
Wow. Did you teach here locally in Colorado, or did you kind of teach throughout?
All here in Colorado. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. So you've been published. You have 11 published books. So first and foremost, congratulations. It's a huge feat. And you had mentioned that you have done independent and then you also did traditional publishing. So which one came first? Did you seek traditional first or did you go independent?
I went independent with my first one.
Okay.
Back in 2009.
Okay.
Ages ago.
Sometimes you think about it, it sure does feel that way now, right?
Right,
I can imagine we're already in 2022.
Yeah. And then I had a publisher out of Canada pick up my next book.
Okay.
But they wanted the ebook. They didn't want the entire, they didn't want the paperback or the hardback. And so I said, okay, she said, we'll do the paperback down the line. Well, after a year or two with them, they didn't want to do the paperback.
Okay.
And I really balked because, my audience that I write for, they need a book in their hands.
Right.
For the most part.
Yeah, that's
and they didn't want to do that. And I said, well, then I would like to have my rights back and then I'll do it on my own.
Right. Yeah. And I see, and I too. So I have a couple of books that I have published, different age range or genre than what you publish in, but I have found that as well. I started out as independent and really just took some time, about a year, to study and figure out what I needed to do in order to even get a book out there, what that looked like, where I needed to resource help from. And I found that it was really hard when it came to traditional publishing, in that it's almost, they pick kind of those parts or pieces that they think are going to be most successful, but sometimes it doesn't necessarily mesh very well with what you're really that overall goal you're trying to reach.
Right. And, it takes so long on the traditional route.
Mm-hmm.
It's sometimes 2 or 3 years once they acquire the book before it's ever seen the light of day. And for me, that was just way too long.
Right. And I find, with some authors, it fits really well. Like those two puzzle pieces just glide right together. Yeah. And for traditional publishing, because of the resources that they have, graphic designers, cover designers, things like that. It just, those puzzle pieces just fall right together and it works perfectly. And then for some, like you mentioned yourself, it just works better to stay independent and really just push it where you need it to be. Now, are you specific to any one platform or are you all inclusive? Do you have your kind of books out there in different faucets?
They're all over the place.
Okay.
I published through Silver Quill Publishing out of England.
Okay. Yes. And you mentioned that as a co-op. So tell me a little more about that. That's actually something new. I've not heard of that before.
Well, I've been with them, probably 5 or 6 years.
Okay.
Not even a little longer. And there's 12 of us. I counted the other day, so I would know how many there were.
Yeah.
I'm the only author from the US.
Okay.
10 of them are from, 9 of them are from England, one's from France, and then we have one from Saudi Arabia.
Okay. And so what does that look like as far as the co-op? Do you all kind of just have different talents that you can give to other authors, or?
No, what it really boils down to is that's our umbrella that we all fit under.
Okay.
So we still publish independently.
Yeah.
But we now publish with Silver Quill Publishing as our house.
Okay, nice. Very cool. Okay.
And when new authors ask to join, then the lady that is the head of it sends out an email to everybody with a sample of the writing, and then we can say yay or nay
Okay.
Yeah. But,
Okay.
it's a pretty close-knit group.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, with 10, 11 people, I could imagine. I mean, do you all find that you publish or kind of, fall into the same genres, or do you all
No,
kind of have everybody kind of fits their
it's all over the board.
niche? Yeah,
Yes.
that's awesome. I mean, what a collaboration to be able to, I think that being able to collaborate with other authors, even those that write in a totally different genre, different age range as you, is so important because it just still brings you so many new ideas. I mean,
Mhm.
just like this. I mean, before our conversation, I would not have known that there were co-op groups like this available as far as for publishing houses, and
Yeah.
that's awesome. So tell me a little bit more, about that writing process. Tell me a little bit more about how that looks like for you. With 11 books, your first being published in '09, about how long does it take you to write your books from the time you start to the time that it's published?
Probably about a year and a half.
Okay.
And I say probably because sometimes it takes me a little longer. It hardly ever takes me a little less.
Right. Yep. I know the feeling.
Even the little picture book series that I do, that takes a full year to get one of those out.
Right.
By the time I decide how to tell the story in simple format, but in exciting format, and then find pictures and an artist to do the pictures and everything, those little books take, and they're like maybe 35 pages.
Right.
So they're
But a lot
not
of
big.
detail, a lot of detail that
Yes.
goes into that. And I'm sure
Yeah.
too, I mean, depending on, just like with your grandson's book, I'm sure there's a lot of research too that has to go into those picture books as well. Do you find there to be any issues with like copywriting or things like that?
No, because there's not a lot of research. They just come straight
Oh,
out of my head.
oh, well, there you go. There you go. Hey, well,
You
hey,
know,
I mean, that's an amazing ability to be able to put those
yeah.
together. And
Yeah, in fact, the first two books, they each have two stories each in them. And the
okay.
first two were stories that I'd written a long time ago. And
So
I just
these are
pulled them out.
not nonfiction books. These are
They're
fiction.
fiction.
Okay. Okay. Now I'm on the same
Yeah,
track.
sorry. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay.
But they're fiction. And, I do them for ages 4 and 5 up through
Okay.
6 and 7 to
Okay.
help those kids with their reading.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. I
And
love everything early development.
And let me backtrack on that because in my 25 years of teaching, I
Mhm.
had so many kids at the high school level that did not read,
Right.
did not like to read.
Right.
And as I mentioned earlier, I'd pull out that Arthurian legend,
Mhm.
and these kids who never picked up a book were going to the library to do research or
Right.
finding books on their own. They could relate to what it was doing in the world because King Arthur will live forever. I
Right.
mean, he comes back in, in new form, and so everybody's with it. And the stories from the ancient world, they really like those. So that's my research was my years of teaching. And I found what kids were drawn to. And so then I've used that and hopefully incorporated it in my books for them.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, and we as librarians, we love when our teachers over at our schools give any type of project or start encouraging reading, because that just brings those kids on through our doors. And really, sometimes it's all it takes, just a little bit of, an exciting tale or something that maybe, they've heard of, but they don't really know a lot about. And that brings them in the door. And then, once we can get our hooks in them, then we can start helping them really find this platform of what they're interested in reading. And yeah, I mean, sky's the limit at that point. That's that's huge. So during your writing process, while you're doing, either your picture books or while you're writing, into your chapter books, do you pretty much do a lot of your planning and writing on your computer? Do you have physical storyboards? Do you have like a journal? What does that process look like?
I write everything out by hand first.
Okay. Okay.
Because I found my kids at school, if I let them compose right on the computer, they never edited.
Right. Right.
So I generally write my whole story out in longhand.
Okay.
And I'll just write it, and then I'll go and I'll put it on the computer. And as I type, I make what minor corrections I need. My storyline is usually all set.
Okay.
I do most of that up here.
Mm-hmm.
I will do a basic outline of a series or of a book, but not very much.
Yeah.
I think I mentioned that one of the best advice I ever got was turn off your critical voice and just let your creative voice write the story because it knows what to do.
Yep. And that can be
And
tough. That can be tough
that's
for some authors.
hard.
Mhm.
But I think I've mastered it pretty well, and I do pretty good doing that.
Okay. So with that process, do you have what I like to lovingly refer to as my project graveyard? Where an idea kind of comes to my mind and it's not really a lot, like it's not really in the form of a story from start to finish, but it's really just like a really strong urge to want to get this out. And then I start writing it. And after usually maybe a couple of chapters, it fizzles out. And then I go, okay, no, this isn't going anywhere. And then I just pretty much set it aside and I move that over into what I call my project graveyard. Do you find with your creative process that you use, do you have projects that come up like that? Or once you've got that storyline in your head, it's golden. We're going.
Once I've got it, it stays there. About the only thing that I have that would be in a project graveyard are complete books, but they're romances.
Okay, right. Yeah.
And
Okay.
it's like, I'd finish it and I'd say, this just isn't me.
Right. So
And it never went any further.
mine is crime thrillers. I love to read crime thrillers. That is my genre. I kind of pick and choose and kind of go between fiction and nonfiction, between true crime and crime mystery and crime thrillers. And I've always wanted to write a crime novel. It is definitely one of my goals in my writing career. And those are the ones that are in my project graveyard.
So maybe that's not what you're supposed to write.
Exactly. It's definitely not. Though I have a creative consultant, would you say, a very close friend of mine that, I love. She gives great constructive criticism. She's very thorough. Doesn't sugarcoat a lot of stuff, which works great for me. I'm a very direct person. And so though she says they're good enough that she would publish them, I go, no, it's just not me. This is not me. This is not me. So in that writing process, you mentioned, you do a lot of your freestyle writing and you keep those journals. So for your books that become typed and on the computer, how many journals do you typically keep for one book? Do you do it by chapter? Like, is it composition style, or do you have like larger notebooks?
I usually just have one big one. I've got
Big one.
story ideas, like for this series that I'm doing now.
Okay.
I know where they're each taking place, so I've got things that I find that I want to take a closer look at, and I just stick them in a folder and do it that way.
Okay. I imagine in my head, I'd have this like giant collection of journals that I'd have to sort through.
Yeah, no, in fact, what I've got sitting here, this is the latest book that I did, are these two notebooks.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And so and I will print it out a few times if I'm not quite sure what I'm doing, because I read better on the printed page than I read on the computer.
Right. Yeah. I do the same. I find myself sometimes going back and forth between, physical books and ebooks, but I really feel like the bulk of my reading I get is from that physical paperback back book, or a journal if I'm writing something down too, and I think it helps a lot for writers who are going through that creative process, that you're not just visualizing it in your head, you're also kinetically writing it down.
Right, exactly.
Kind of helps that storyline kind of flow a little bit more for you.
It does. And on my writing, I can't tell you the last time I wrote this summer. I mean, it's been not very productive that way. But when I do write, I'll write for so many, for however long I have, depending on other things that are in the way. And then when I go back and pick it up, I'll go back and read through what I've written. And when I get to the end of what I've written, then I just start writing again.
Right. Yep. That faucet just turns on and it just starts flowing back out. Yeah. So what is one of the most surprising things that you've learned while you've been on this journey of writing and publishing your books? there anything that you have that really just you thought would go differently, and then when it came to fruition, it was, it came out a little bit differently or anything like that?
Yeah, I do. For one thing, I'll tell you, writing one book and marketing it's a heck of a lot easier than writing 11 books and marketing all of them.
Hey, that's very fair. I can totally understand that.
Yeah. But I think as far as my books go, probably the thing that surprised me most is who writes my books.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and I mentioned this, Sons of the Sphinx, my Egyptian stories.
Okay.
Let me pull those out here 1 second. They're all here. I have Tutankhamun Speaks, and then I have Sons of the Sphinx.
Yes.
Well, this is the book I wanted to write.
Right.
And I tried to write it probably 4 or 5 times. I'd start.
Yeah.
And I'd get so far, and that was it. And it's like, what's the matter? I so want to do this story set
right.
in, time travel. And finally, I just kind of started listening to the voices in my head. I'm not crazy, but they are there.
Yep. Oh, they're there.
And this guy said, you know what? You write my story first, and I'll let you write this one.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I had to do. It sounds crazy, but I had to write his story, Tutankhamun Speaks. And once I did that, this one just went like nothing at all. It was right there.
Right. But I know exactly what you mean. And I hear that from so many authors and I really feel like you can feel that. You can feel that in the story. When you're really letting the character come forth and speak, it just really it plants a foundation for those characters, way more than what you would see. Like if you had just pushed and pushed and pushed, I got to finish this one before I write this other one. And I've heard that a lot, that if you really just let the characters talk, that, the book just comes out so much more natural. So talking about letting your characters write your work, and that being one of the more surprising things that you've learned about your writing, tell us a little bit more about a special moment that you've had with a reader. Because when you bring those characters to life and you bring that story to life, I really feel like no matter what the age range, readers can feel that. And so tell me about a moment that you've had with a reader that really made you think, yep, okay, I'm on the right track with the way that I'm doing this.
Okay. Most of my sales are face-to-face with kids, or with grandparents or parents, but most of the time it's with young kids, because I do a lot of craft fairs, school fairs.
Mm-hmm.
I do farmers markets and those types of things, so that I'm out there and can meet and talk with kids, because they are my true audience.
Right.
And so a couple years ago, I was up in Conifer at a Christmas market. And evidently I sold a grandma my Guinevere trilogy.
Gotcha.
And so then in May of this year,
mm-hmm.
this girl came over and she said, "Oh, I just love you." And she gave me a hug and she said, "I've read your Guinevere books at least 6 times. Wow. And I said, "Well, really, where did you get them?" And her grandma said, "I bought them from you up in Conifer 2 years ago and gave them to her for Christmas."
Wow.
And she said the pages hardly ever rest.
Right.
She continually reads.
Yes.
Back and forth, and so, it's nice to hear that.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I had more boys that would do that, but it's nice to hear that from the girls that I've hit the mark where I want to.
Right.
Like I said, I write for kids a lot who don't like to read or who have trouble reading.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think that the Arthurian legend has been around forever, will be around long after we're gone, in different forms and things. And some of the kids I talk to don't know who he is.
Right.
Don't know about the legend. And I think it's so important that they add that piece of knowledge
mm-hmm.
to their brains, and so that they can express that and they can see similar items in the world around them.
Right.
Because, literature, if you can't connect it with what you're doing day after day after day, and what you see, it really has no meaning.
Right. Right.
It's just, it is true escapism, and it means it doesn't settle in. It doesn't make you think more.
Right.
Yes,
Right.
if
Well, and I
you-
think that, that it really hits home for those of us who, who have been with amazing literature teachers like yourself that have really brought things to life that, weren't necessarily something that we thought were going to be things we'd be interested in, when we were young adults or, teenagers in high school. And I mean, what an amazing experience for that young lady to be able to find something
Yes.
that she just loves and is that passionate about. And, it's hard. Nowadays, we are in a technology ridden
Yes.
world, and it's hard, I think, sometimes, especially for those that are in our youth, to really be able to sit down and not have that distraction of the screen. Though it's, it's important in some aspects of life and the way
Right.
that we connect with people. But I think that it really devalues that ability for us as readers to be able to really get that imagination flowing. And so, what an amazing experience that I think that's a beautiful moment to be able to
Yeah,
have with
it is. And and I've had parents take pictures of their kids at, I have one that sent me a picture of his granddaughter at the Rockies game reading Guinevere.
Oh.
I mean, it's just, you want to connect with them on that level, because it is so important. Reading and touching does so much more for the growth of their brains.
Yeah. I agree. I think that there's something about, with each flip of that page, having that physical book in your hand, and each flip of the page, you just kind of you move a little bit further into that story and that movie in your brain. And, I think it's important for our youth to experience that, because I think as we get older, with all of the different aspects of life between family and work and things like that, I think it's something that we always have with us, but we tend to lose over the years.
Right. Yeah.
But I think that if it's really implanted firmly in our children, there from an early age, it's much harder to let that go. And I think that's amazing. So talking about age range, between your book series and your picture books, I know you mentioned that you have some that are a little bit for earlier development. What age range would you say really is best suited for your chapter books and your series that you have currently published?
My chapter books, which is my Arthurian legend, are ages 8 and 9 up through 13 and 14.
Okay.
Okay. They're shorter chapters.
Yeah.
They all have a graphic of some sort at the very beginning, because I've watched kids in the library that don't like to read.
Yeah.
And the first thing they do is go through and say, okay, I don't have to read this many pages.
Right.
So I thought, well, I'll start each chapter off with a picture,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't have to read that page, but that picture gives them some idea of what to expect when they pick up the book and actually start reading.
Right.
So,
Now so that'd be your Arthurian books, and then your Egyptian books that you have, the two from that series, same age range for those as well? Or?
I'd say a little bit higher. I start them at 12 or 13 and then go on up.
Okay.
I'm always amazed at the people that come by, and the grown-ups, I guess you could call them. I used to call them older readers, but they don't like that. So now I said the mature readers who come by.
Right.
And they're drawn to that ancient world too,
Right.
and they'll pick those up. But then on the other hand, I have these 3rd and 4th graders who have had a little Egyptian unit in school, maybe only 2 or 3 weeks long, but they see Tutankhamun on that cover.
Right.
Say, oh, I've got to have that.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing in there that, that is awful for them, but the
Right.
names can be hard.
Right.
And so, I sell a lot of those to those 3rd and 4th graders, and I'm always amazed when they ask for those too.
Right.
So, but generally that's up higher. And my new series, The Feathers of the Phoenix.
Yes.
Is early YA.
Okay.
Very and then on up too. So.
Yeah. And that one is the first of a series of 5. Is that correct?
5. Yes.
Okay. Do you already have? Right. Okay. Trust me, you've got the track record. I know you'll get there. Do you already have the other books in that series planned out, or at least an idea of kind of where it's going to move into?
I have them all planned
Okay.
in my head.
Yep.
They all have names except for the one set in England. I haven't decided what to call it.
Yeah.
The next one, book 2, is called The North Star. It's set in
Okay.
Iceland, Norse. And then I have From the Fires of, Out of the Fire, something like that. I'd have to look back and refresh, which will take place in Pompeii.
Okay.
And then what is that? 3? That's 4. That's 4. And then the final one will take place back in Egypt.
Okay. Okay. So, very cool. Now that book, I know, just written, based off of which, by the way, is going to be coming out. It's on pre-order now, correct? For ebook.
Right.
And then it's going to be coming out later September, where it'll be available to purchase on ebook on those platforms. That book is about kind of the Atlantis,
the whole series, yes.
City of Atlantis, right? Okay, very cool. Now, so your other two, so we know the one is set in Egypt and the other is more, Arthurian. Kind of what do those storylines look like on your other series?
On the other books in that series, or
in your
sorry.
Nope, that's okay.
The North Star is set in Iceland. The only problem I have with that, they all have to find a feather from the Phoenix. There were 5 of them that Poseidon cast aside when he sank the island.
Okay.
If they can find all 5 of those and return them to the Atlantean horse, then that island will raise again, and its descendants who still live on Earth will be given the opportunity to go home.
Very cool. So really it's this quest to be able to find these puzzle pieces and bring those together in order to, essentially re-erect the city of Atlantis. Very cool. Now, your other books, the books that you have for your Egyptian series, you had mentioned, now that's about time travelers?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. In fact, Rosa from Sons of the Sphinx, she is going to be in the Atlantean.
Nice. Okay.
Because she was 15 years old in Sons of the Sphinx, and she hears the dead.
Okay.
That's her special curse.
Okay.
The grandma passed down.
Yeah.
But what she comes to discover is she actually walks in 2 worlds.
Okay.
Day's world and the ancient world.
Gotcha. What a cool story.
And so that's why I decided, well, you know what, I'm going to take her along and let her be one of 2 main characters. The other is her cousin Jerome.
Okay.
I need a male in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Jerome is a year or 2 younger than her, but they are both tasked with finding those feathers. And they're dangerous tasks that they have to perform. They are pursued by the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse.
Oh, wow.
Who have taken on the name, but not necessarily the goals of those 4 horsemen, because they want the feathers, because they want to be in control of Atlantis when it rises, because of all the riches supposedly still there. So they're very greedy, and they're not above murder to get what they want.
Okay.
So it's I think they're going to be exciting adventures. I hope so.
Yeah. Well, I love that you're bringing, characters from one story into a new story, because really then your readers, it just makes it such an easy transition from one series into the next series. And I love that you're taking different ideas, in different locations. When you say Iceland, my brain goes, Atlantis, Iceland. Now I'm intrigued because I want to know what those 2 have together. So I think that's awesome that you're really bringing, between the 4 horsemen, you're bringing some, Grecian mythology in there and different locations, and what an experience for your readers. I think I'm looking forward to it.
I enjoy writing those things too.
Yeah.
It's like I'm going back in time myself and seeing things as they were.
Yeah.
And doing that. So
yeah. Well, we definitely look forward to it at the library. We are waiting anxiously for the paperback to come out, because we would like to add that into our collection. We have that on our to get lists to bring in along with some of your other series as well. So for patrons who are watching today and would like to check out any of the books, we are looking to add those into our collection. So you can hopefully find those soon here on our website, which I will list towards the end of our interview today. So with all of those series that you currently have, would you say so your Arthurian series is different? So really, if you're going to go into the Feathers of the Phoenix, start with the two from the Egyptian series, then
and you really only need to start with Sons of the Sphinx.
Okay.
And if you don't start with that one, I put enough of the backstory through the Feathers of the Phoenix, through the Atlantean horse,
Okay.
but you still miss out on Rosa's development.
Right. Yeah.
Where she comes to think of this gift that she's been given as truly as a gift.
Okay. Yeah.
Not as a curse.
Right.
You know, which she has thought of, because when you're talking to nobody in the middle of a class,
right,
and your friends, your classmates,
right,
she doesn't have many friends, are looking at you like you've lost your marbles.
Right.
You know, you miss that if you don't actually read Sons of the Sphinx.
Right. Well, and what an amazing way to be able to talk to our youth that are experiencing so many different things, emotions and feelings and growth. You know, all of a sudden one morning you wake up and you felt like you were 5 foot tall yesterday, and now you feel like you're 6 foot tall today. You know, these different transitions that our youth go through. And I think that being able to read a character and to relate to that is huge. And so, and she has this, you know, ability that some may look at and be like, oh, that's a little bit on the unique side. But, you know, to her, I think really being able to come into that and grasp that and then see her move into the Feathers of the Phoenix series, I think that'll be huge. Now, of all of the characters that you've written, what would you say is your most favorite or your most fun to have written?
You know, I have to go back to my Arthurian stories, to the Guinevere trilogy. There was only going to be one book. Yeah. That was all I was going to do.
Really?
Because all my high school students knew when we started King Arthur, they knew everything about Arthur. They knew about Merlin. They knew about the Knights of the Round Table. They knew about Lancelot. I kid you not, for 20 some years, everything they told me about Guinevere was the same. Right. She married Arthur. She cheated on him, and she's the downfall of Camelot. Yeah. And I decided right then and there, I thought, you know, when I get done teaching, that's not going to be all they know about this girl. Right. You know, she's 12 years old. You can't just say that's all there is to her. So that was the only one I was going to write. Okay. So with the adventures of her and her best friend Sedlin, when I finished book 1, I was done. Okay. I said, I've written what I wanted to write, and that's it. Well, you know, here's those voices in your head again. They kept saying, Winter says, what's going to happen to me? Am I really going to marry King Arthur? What's going to be going? And Sedlin said, you know, you promised me I could be a knight. Is that going to happen? When is that going to happen? I wrote 3 other books before I went back to write the second book in the Guinevere trilogy. Wow. And so I told him, I said, I'll write you one more book. Right. Well, they're in such bad straits at the end of book 2, I had to write 3. Right. And about 2/3 of the way through in book 3, I had to stop. And I said, guys, I can't do this. I cannot write what you're telling me to write. I just can't go there. Right. And Jennifer, I quit for probably close to a month. Wow. And I just said, no, I can't. I just can't do this. And finally, I gave in and I said, okay, it's your story. I'll do it. And I'm still, even to this day, because book 3 came out in 2020. I'm still amazed at the courage and friendship that these two display. It's like, who would not give to have one of these two for a friend? Right, right. They are willing to put everything on the line and have no doubts. Right. And so as much fun as I have with Rosa in her travels, I've never met a more courageous pair of characters. Right. And in the very beginning, you really don't see much of that, but as they grow and adjust to their surroundings and to the situations that they're forced into.
Right.
They, they're probably my favorite. I never thought they'd end up like that.
Right. Right. But sometimes it just sticks with you, and you hear people say, well, you wrote the characters. Don't you know how they were going to come out? No, you really don't. It is a very humbling, I think, experience, at least for me, to say that there have been times where, like you mentioned, I'll kind of just say, okay, here's where I'm going to start. Here's where I'm going to go. And here's where I'm going to go. And here's where I'm going to go. And somewhere between point A and point Z, somewhere around, usually it's about N to maybe S, it goes all the way back over here. And all of a sudden your characters just have taken you for a ride, and it's just, but I think it becomes so organic, but to be able to write that type of character, I think is huge, especially for, that age range that you're fitting into as far as for your book series, because just like with Rosa's, with the things that she's experienced, it's the same. I think that it really gives kids and youth an ability to be able to relate to these characters.
Yes.
And I really think that that's what keeps drawing them in, and that's what keeps making them want to read more into these stories that you've created. And that's amazing.
Rosa is like every high school girl.
Yeah.
She doesn't want to be different.
Right. Right.
That is the worst thing.
Mm-hmm.
That she is. And for her to finally figure out that is okay.
Right.
Is a huge shift in who she is.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to be different. It's not a curse. It's okay.
Right. Yeah. Make the best out of it. Find the way, even though it may not be the most ideal situation for somebody, the way they look at it, but, just make the best out of that situation. And then you find that, as that character develops and as that character grows, and all of a sudden they're coming into this gift, and it's becoming something so much more than just this, this curse that was put upon them. And I think that's big. And you can feel that. You can feel that in story.
Oh, you can. Yes.
During that character development, for sure.
Yes. And, and I'm always amazed when somebody will read something that I've written out loud. It's like,
right.
Did I really write that?
Right. Right.
Really, I did that. I mean, it is truly a creative experience that I don't think you have a whole lot of control over.
Right.
I mean, you have some controls there, but it's not up to you and what you're doing when you're doing fiction, I don't think.
Right. No, I absolutely agree. Well, and that too, I think that for those that are watching and are going, really, this is something that I've really wanted to do for a long time. Or those that have kind of, like you mentioned, you kind of had always written, and then, but never really in that faucet or in that mindset of, I'm going to publish this book. I think for those that are, wanting to be encouraged, let's talk about those new writers, those ones that are coming, either those, students previously or those that are reading your books currently. What ways would you say, that you can give advice to in order to encourage those new writers coming into their skills?
Well, I try to encourage them not to be too judgmental.
Mm-hmm.
Don't judge yourself. Just write what you want. And I do help them when I do writing workshops. I do help them outline a story.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that helps when you're just beginning. I did. I don't anymore, but I did with my very first one. And so, I go over that with them, and, who you're going to have as characters.
Mm-hmm.
What are they going to be like? What are they going to do?
Mm-hmm.
What problems or difficulties are they going to encounter? So I try to do that. And some of them will grasp that.
Mm-hmm.
Others, it takes a little longer, or it never goes.
Right.
It's not for everybody.
Right.
But, it's a starting point. And I think that's what's important.
Right.
And it's kind of like when it's kind of like when you're teaching them how to write a 5-paragraph essay.
Right.
You start with that controlling statement.
Yeah.
And that's your basis. And then you must have this and this and this and then this.
Yes.
And so you kind of give them that outline and say, okay, now you've got this. Now what can you possibly do with something like this?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, I think it's one of those situations where it may look this way and it may be very formatted in the beginning, but as you grow into this talent, it becomes,
Right.
it's still there. That fundamental is still there, but it just looks different and it feels
Yes.
different as you go through it. Now, in your writing, have you ever, I know, one of the big scary terms, I think, especially for new authors, is writer's block. How do you, when you get to this point, you just don't really know what to say, what do you do? For myself, I have to set it down and walk away. That's not a creative time for me when I'm not in, I can't push it. It's just like you mentioned, you got to let your characters talk. And sometimes they need a breather. Sometimes they need a break. Would you say that writer's block scares you, or have you ever experienced writer's block? What have you done, if you have, to kind of overcome that?
When I'm writing and before I'm writing, I always do a lot up here.
Mm-hmm.
I do a lot of mind work, and I just let it run through several scenarios, and by the time I'm ready to put pen to paper, it's all up here.
Yeah.
For the most part. So I'm kind of like you. If it's not working, I walk away. I do something else. I may go out in the yard and pull weeds or something, for 3 weeks, whatever.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Book 2 of this series, The North Star, I have the general idea, but the one problem I'm having is these kids just started school
Mm-hmm.
the 3rd week of August, and they have to be in Iceland for the equinox in September.
Oh, wow.
So how do I get them out of school?
Right.
With maybe 4 weeks under their belt for whatever I need them.
Right. And for it to make sense. Yeah.
Right. So, so that's, I'm still floating that around. I guess that would be my writer's block, if you wanted to call it that, but I haven't figured out how I'm going to do that. I could do similar to what Rosa encounters, is that when she's taken back to ancient Egypt, while she passes the days there,
Mm-hmm.
nothing passes in her world.
Right.
My daughter suggested have a pipe break in the school, and they have to close it down for
Oh, there you go.
4 days. It's like, okay, that's
right. Create a small crisis. I mean, it's still relatable. Could definitely happen. Yeah.
So I try to do a lot up here. I do a lot up here. Mm-hmm. And so I may not actually start writing for a month or 2.
Right.
Until I've figured out where it's going.
Right. Okay. So. Well, have you ever written, this wasn't one of our interview questions, but it is always one that interests me. Have you ever written, or have you based any of your characters on anyone that you know?
Oh, I think on me.
Oh, on you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my students.
Yeah. It's the one thing you know the best, right?
That's right. I didn't want to be different in high school.
Right.
Nobody wants to be different in high school. I love to go on adventures. That's why we travel around the world. I love to do those things. I would have loved to have done them when I was 13 or 14, but just didn't do that. And so I think a lot of it comes from my observation of students through the years.
Yeah.
What sets them off, what keeps them calm, what worries them the most, and what things make them really, real happy.
Right.
And so, and then a little bit on me. Yes.
Yeah. Well, and I think for new writers too, I think a good piece of advice is just like what you said, write about something that you're familiar with, at least to start, and as you grow into this talent, as you grow into this skill, it's just like any other type of skill. The more you do it, the more you practice, the better it becomes.
Right.
And the more at that point, you kind of know where to find your research, where to start looking at, the different locations you want, or your story settings. But really just sticking to what is familiar. And yeah, I mean, if you can use your own personal attributes or your experiences that you've had, I mean, what better place to start when you're starting to, map out this book that you're doing. Another, I think, very scary thing for writers. And I too, when I very first started, it was a very scary part of it for me, because I did not have a mentor that shared with me that, it was very important to write how you want and not how you expect people to want the story to go. And that was, it was a big hurdle for me to overcome in my very first novels. And I got very wrapped up in reviews. You know, I would go and I would look at the reviews and I would say, oh, are people liking it? And generally speaking, I didn't have, you know, everybody saying they hated it. So I thought that's a success, right? But reviews can be very tricky because I think sometimes that they can really close doors that shouldn't be getting closed. You know, obviously we know that not every book is everyone's cup of tea, but
Right.
how do you handle reviews, or, you know, what does that look like for you?
I don't read them.
Yeah. That's the best thing.
I don't read them.
Alone.
Just, you know, you can spend all day going to different websites,
right,
to see, you know, what somebody's saying about your book, you know, and I don't have that much time.
right, right.
You know, it's like, I know some authors that check religiously every day, sometimes every couple hours every day, to see how many books they've sold.
Right, right.
I don't have time to do that, guys.
Yeah.
You know,
Let
if
it
they
flow.
sell, they sell. And, you know, I
Right.
mean, I do the best I can, and I just keep on going.
Right.
And so, you know, yeah, but I don't look at reviews. I have a reader that is also my line editor, and then I have a content editor. And then my daughter and my husband read the books.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's, in fact, my husband didn't like Sons of the Sphinx because he didn't like Rosa.
Oh, right.
I said, well, that's nice that you tell me now. You know?
Right.
But then he read the Atlantean Horse, and I said, well, he said, well, I like Rosa now.
Oh, well, there you go.
So, you know, I mean, you just,
Yeah.
I'm too independent to depend on what other people think.
Right. Right.
I know, if I know in my heart and my conscience that I've written a good story, that's all I need.
Right. Well, and I find too, reviews aren't necessarily constructive criticism for me.
Nope.
In almost 99%, statistically speaking, to put a number out there, you know, I find that more times than not, reviews really just simply are, I like it or I don't. There's no constructive criticism. So unless you're really relying on those people to give you that, and those are, like you said, you know, your line editor, your content editor, your creative assistant, whatever it is that you're using, your beta readers, you know, those are the ones. Rely on that and rely on that constructive criticism.
Right.
Well, I absolutely have loved our time together today.
Oh, it's been fun.
We are nearing the end of our interview. I tell you, you know, Cheryl, you are just an amazing storyteller. It is a phenomenal gift. I am so excited that you were able to get together with us. I do want to, we've got a couple minutes left. I want to take a little bit of time and just show our readers where they can find you at. So I am going to bring up my screen here, and I am going to show our readers your blog page and then also your page as well. So as I do this, tell us a little bit more about what this page is. So I'm going to first switch over, and I'm going to, let's go to my desktop here and share. Whoop.
Maybe.
Maybe. Is it going to, open systems preferences. Oh, goodness. Okay. What I may have to do is I may have to clip in screen share. For some reason, my security settings on my Zoom is not wanting to let me share my screen. I'm going to try it one more time. Down here, share my screen. And, okay. Nope. Okay, there we go. Screen recording.
Maybe.
Okay, no, it's not going to let me. So what I'll do is I'll clip that in, but tell us a little bit more about what is the information on that. So we have your blog page, which is, I'm going to list that link on so that people can click directly onto it. Tell us what we will find information-wise on your blog page.
Okay, Carpinello's writing pages. You know, when I started writing, everybody's, oh, you gotta have a blog, you gotta have a blog.
Yeah.
You gotta post religiously, you know,
Mhm.
once a week or twice a week. And I thought, what would I do with one?
Right.
You know, and I, you know, well, write reviews. And it's like, I don't have time to read a lot of books and write a review.
Right.
I understand the importance of having a blog, but you know, I can't do that. And so what I decided to do was to do author interviews.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do, for the most part, uh, children's, middle grade, and young adult authors.
Okay.
And I do interviews with them on my blog page
Wonderful.
and whatever book they currently have out.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I do on my blog page. I do author interviews, let people know about new authors or familiar authors, you know, that have something new coming out, just to kind of to share with everybody.
Yeah. Well, and
You
too,
know?
I think, that also gives people the ability so that they see, well, I really liked this book. And so I would like this book as well. And I think they're definitely
Right.
important, in that collaboration. And then on your website, we have the ability, our patrons or readers have the ability to go to your website. They can read more about your writing. They can also link over to your blog through your website as well.
Right.
And then they can also find your books with the synopsis of those books and the ability to be able to go and purchase those also through your website, correct?
Correct. With fingers crossed.
Oh, with fingers crossed.
Because it doesn't always work right.
Okay, there. Yep.
And
Nope. Technology.
So, you know, I always encourage, you know, contact me by email. I'll sell you anything. I'll sell you whatever you want by email.
There you
You
go.
know, and then I can personalize them and
Yeah.
sign them, because you know, when you buy online, they're not signed, they're not personalized.
Right.
And I
Right.
think readers really do enjoy that.
It's a special
So,
touch. Yeah.
yeah. So, you know, I always encourage them, if you can't get it on my website because it's whatever is not working at the moment, then
Right.
just email me and let me know, and we'll figure it out.
Yeah. As we can see that technology sometimes doesn't go the way that we want it to.
Well, you know, and that's another piece, you know, it takes so much time
Right.
to develop a web page
Yeah.
and to update it and to keep updating. And
Yeah.
it's like, oh my heavens.
And
Yes.
sometimes it just takes one character in that code to just ruin
Yes.
everything.
Yes.
I know we have experienced that sometimes as well with our website for the library. So I definitely know how that goes. Well, Cheryl, thank you again so much. I appreciate your time today. We're going to wrap up our segment today. I'll have this posted to our YouTube page so that our readers can find it, along with the links to your blog, your website, and I will include your email on there as well.
Yes.
That way, if they're interested or they want to have something personalized, they can find you there. In addition to that, I know you're also on social media, so we'll list those media links on there.
Okay.
And we definitely look forward to that September release of The Feathers of the Phoenix.
Well, and the paperback will be coming that day too. I just don't have it up there.
Okay. Yeah. Awesome.
So they both come out the same day, but I haven't got that far yet. So.
Yep. Perfect.
Okay.
All right. Wow. So what an awesome author talk to have with Cheryl today. As I mentioned before, she's just an amazing storyteller, and she really brings her stories to life and those characters to life. I want to be able to show you how you can find Cheryl so that way you can link up with her books, learn more about her books and what she does. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually share my screen. And once I do that, it is going to bring us over to Safari. So the first page we're going to go into here is author Cheryl Carpinello's website. So as you can see right up here at the top, CherylCarpinello.com is our website that you can go to in order to access her webpage, her information about her writing and her books. As mentioned, she did say that there are certain times where, just like with any technology, as you saw during our author talk recording, sometimes web pages, things like that, don't like to cooperate for us, or apps. If you are wanting to have a personalized experience with any of Cheryl's books and to order those with them being personalized, you can contact her via email. you will find that her email is right here, ccarpinello@mac.com. You can email her directly with your request for which books that you're wanting and asking for personalization as well. Here on her page, you can navigate throughout her page by going into her writing, about her writing. It tells you a little bit more about what these books are that are in her different series. How she came about to writing these books, the names of her books, the different picture books that are available for purchase. In addition to that, it also links you over to blog information as well as some recent interviews that Cheryl herself has done as well. Now, if you go into the books section, this is where you can actually go directly into the books. You can see which books are part of the series and what book number it is of that series. You can order them by linking directly through Amazon, or as mentioned before, going to Cheryl directly just through email with the request for the book. She'll talk to you about how she can take payment and also talk to you about getting some of those books personalized. She's got a couple of different books that are available in her Guinevere series, as well as the Young Knights of the Round Table. And then she also has two books in this Egyptian series. You'll find the synopsis of these books right here next to them. You'll also see the different cover art for them as well, awards that she has won for her different books, as well as her picture books here below as well. We mentioned that in the interview, her grandson had done an amazing feat and actually written his first book at 9 years old. And that book is also right down here at the bottom. It's Cameron's Book of Insects, a picture book along with some really cool information. And you will also see that it is also an award winner as well. So you can directly order these through Cheryl by going to that email address, or you can, which you'll find here as well, or you can link over to those that are available on Amazon to be able to purchase these books on ebook or on paperback book. Now, in addition to that, you can also follow Cheryl's writing and some of her book interest on her blog, which is Carpinello's Writing Pages. You'll see the address right here at the top, Carpinello's Writing Pages.blogspot.com. And that'll take you right here into her blog where she shares with you different information about books that she has read, author interviews that she has done. And these will range all the way from, whether that be young adult, whether that be youth or juvenile fiction, up into some of these are also into the adult fiction section. You will find the genre of that particular book here underneath the cover art. And then below that, you will see the information about that book, as well as being able to go to the website, the link here, in order to purchase it if that is a book that you find it is something that you would be interested in. Again, you will also find here to the right side of the page different books that are available from Cheryl's collection, from her Guinevere collection and the Arthurian studies, and then also you will find her Egyptian series here as well. We're really thankful for Cheryl to be able to join us today and be able to do an author talk. We had an amazing time. For those of you that are aspiring writers, I really hope that you found some inspiration in where she came from, what she's experienced, the things that have inspired her throughout her writing, and where she is now in having her books published. As you heard, I myself am also a published author as well. It is something that I do more on the hobby level nowadays. In addition to my position with the library, we are expecting to hold some creative writing classes as well as a literary and art contest coming up here soon within the library. If you ever have any questions on programs that we are holding, classes that we are teaching, please feel free to reach out to me. My email at the library is jrichardson@pplibraries.org. Or if you just simply have questions about the writing process, finding resources, finding books that we might be able to get you compared with, so that you can get more information on your research before you go into publishing, we are always happy to do that as your local resource there at the library. So I appreciate Cheryl. I appreciate you all for joining us today. We are excited to be able to continue to expand our online services and our online collection here on our YouTube page. So by all means, please hit the follow button. We will have some more author talks coming up very soon with some local Colorado authors, as well as others also. So we look forward to that. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I appreciate your time with us.